Welcome, everybody, to Neepawa's 2025 Election Roundtable. Joining with me are three of our community's movers and shakers. Have been over the past number of years. None of them are new to that role. And we're here to talk about our perception from our community in terms of what are the important issues we feel that relate directly to how we live and how we do business here. On my left, and we'll start, it's delightful to have Amanda on the left because I want to go clockwise. Amanda Naughton-Gale, who is the director of the Salvation Army Community
Ministries Union.
Ministries. Welcome. Thank you, Amanda.
Thanks for having me.
Going around the table, we have our senior person on the panel, and I can say this, Ken Waddell, who has worn many hats, some of them political, certainly for a long time in the media business, newspaper. And welcome, Ken.
Good to be here. Thanks,
and Brian.
Hedley.
Hedley, good Lord. I know. I apologize for that.
No
Brian
problem.
Hedley, who wears two hats currently. One, he is our current mayor, incumbent, and as well as he's been the chief head knocker and bottle washer for the local co-op for a number of years now.
27 in Neepawa.
27 in the... Oh.
Yeah.
Whoa, it took my breath away. Sorry, everybody. Welcome.
Yep, thank you.
So we'll start first with just giving a little bit of feedback from the individuals. My first question, and we'll start with Amanda. Basically, who are you? What do you do currently? And your role within the community. And if you could identify for you the two most important issues you see in this current election.
Sure.
Okay.
Thanks, Don. So I'm Amanda Naughton-Gale. I'm the Community Ministries Director for the Salvation Army Neepawa Community Services. Here, I've been in my role for 13 years. We operate a food bank and other community services, as well as our thrift store. And so I kind of see and support those who may be struggling a lot financially or otherwise within our community. I've been in this community for the last almost 21 years, and I've had a couple of various roles in that, whether that was economic development officer, I was general manager of NACTV at one point in time, and manager at the Red Apple when it started as well. So I feel like I've been involved in a number of things in the community, whether that's been the Neepawa Kin Club, the Chamber of Commerce, tourism, Arts Forward. So I've had a little bit of and currently now on Habitat for Humanity as well. The two most important issues in this election, there's so many, it's hard to kind of break down into just two. I would say for the ones that really affect every single day of what we see and who we see is affordability. So whether that is housing affordability, cost of living, all of those things. But the overwhelming, I would say, thing that's looming, and it's interesting that when we're talking to clients and things like that, people are worried about our current state in the world and our relationship with the United States and tariffs. And so I would say those are kind of the two issues that who can really manage those kind of crises well, and what people are really kind of focused on. I would say those are definitely two things that I see in my everyday that would be most important. The other thing is, and I know this is more than two, but I would say just how people's rights are protected and supported, and that are most vulnerable are not being left behind. And so that I feel is a very important part of when I'm looking at party platforms, who's bringing what to the table. So that's kind of how I viewed this past election.
Thank you. That's a really nice summary, and don't worry about the third one. You're well within time limits. Thank you very much. Ken, can we go to you?
Well, thank you, Don. Thank you for having me as part of this panel today. Ken Waddell, publisher of the Neepawa Banner and Press, manager of the Rivers Banner, and publisher of the Verdant Empire Advance. Been in Neepawa here for 54 years, and I guess we're pretty well rooted here, although you have to be buried here before you're from here, they say. And at my age, well, that may be closer than we think. But anyway, the biggest issue for me, I'm having trouble coming up with a second issue, but the biggest issue for me is Manitoba's place in the Confederation. Because, the three provinces to the west of us are have provinces. They donate to the transfer funds, and Manitoba doesn't, and we're a long way from it. We're billions of dollars into the hole, so to speak, every year in terms of how much money comes from the federal transfer payments. And I would like to see, the biggest issue for me, I'd be happy to support any party that can attempt policies that will build Manitoba's economy, because we've got the little tiny seaport in Hudson Bay, which is hardly used at all at Churchill. We probably need more railroads. I wrote about this week in my column that's coming out this coming week. We need a lot more development. We need to have more food processing. And there's just so many issues around that. Because for example, people say, well, let's have another food processing plant. Well, you got to find the community that has the hydro and the water to do it. And that's not available in most communities. It's just not there. And
the people and the housing.
Well, yeah, for sure. And I guess, and I'll latch on to the housing one. Thank you for that reminder, Amanda, because housing has always been a near and dear thing to me. When I came here with my wife and baby boy, who's, well, he's not a baby anymore. Anyway, we were able to, I was making $7,000 a year. That was my gross income. We were able to buy a house for $4,000. It was a very small house and not a great house, but it was certainly a good little starter home for my wife and I and a baby. And in that same year, pretty much within the year, we bought a brand new truck, pickup truck, plain but serviceable truck for I think $2,200. So for 6/7 of my yearly salary, I had a house and a brand new truck, old house, brand new truck. That's so far to reach now for people today that it's just ridiculous. We're never going to get back to that, but I hope we can stop the train somewhat in terms of the escalation of costs and bring our, some reality back to, or some reason back to the reality of how people get started. So I was 12 months into a job. I had a house, a little bit of a mortgage. I had a brand new truck, and we thought we had the world by the tail on the downhill run, and we did by comparison with the kids today.
Okay, thank you. You brought up some interesting points, Brian.
Yes, well, thanks for having me. I'm Brian Hedley, General Manager for Neepawa Gladstone Co-op. I've been 27 years in Neepawa here, 42 years with the company. Also Mayor for the town of Neepawa. I guess this is coming up to Deputy Mayor for 4 years, and now I'm on the first term as Mayor. So I guess if I'm looking at concerns, I guess I'll do it both from the business side and from the town side. So certainly for us, the tariffs are a big concern for retail. That has the ability to take our standards of living down and creating a lot more problems. And then looking at it from the town perspective, I know if you were to ask the person on the street, they'd say streets and sidewalks is number one concern. But I'm glad to hear both my colleagues have actually picked out, in my mind, the most the largest crisis that we have, and I feel it's housing. Yeah, I know there's daycares, concerns, additional schools and that are concerns. There's a lot of different concerns, but I think that affordable housing is we need that to be able to get people into the community, and not just affordable extra housing. We're limited on housing locations and that, and so yeah, I would say housing would be our number one town concern.
Okay. Well, you all come up with some very interesting concerns. Before I get to, I think I'm looking at this. I'd like a little bit more expansion in terms of what you said. So let's talk about the affordability. Talk more about that affordability piece.
Yeah, for sure, Don. So, just kind of, what Ken had said, right? Like the days of being able to afford a house and a car and all of those things and still feel like you were financially stable and able to put food on the table and all of those things have been gone for a long time. Even when we came to this community, the house that we bought was $73,000, and today on the market would be probably over the $200,000. Have we put a lot of time, effort, and money into the place? Not necessarily, right? Not that much more, that's for sure. When I'm dealing with clients, we see a lot of debt load, like a lot of debt load, and that is, new trucks or new cars or new vehicles. Vehicles are a huge thing because in rural Manitoba, you need transportation. You need to be able to get to your job. You need to be able to get to where you need to go or to your doctor even, because you may not have a doctor in town. So that access to transportation is huge. Even getting into appointments to Winnipeg, those sorts of things, or into Brandon, if you don't have a vehicle, it is so incredibly difficult for people to access that because of the lack of public transportation. Folks can, say, get the handy van to go into Brandon, but it is so cost prohibitive. It's, about $300 for an afternoon appointment to get to Brandon. And if you don't have that kind of money, that's only one time, right? So how do you afford to do that if you have multiple appointments or outside of the community?
It brings to point, I was listening to a program today and it talked about that whole sense of what is the middle class now? What is the middle class? And the other thing you brought up, our community has really benefited from a tremendous influx of people from other countries. Countries that typically they don't own their own vehicles. There is public transportation or they walk. Coming here, your point is right on the money. If you live in rural Canada, you need to have transportation. Yes.
Yeah. Even so, like even at our food bank, so we just opened up a new satellite location in McCurry because we identified that there were a large cluster of the amount of people that we were serving from that community. And the number one barrier for them was transportation. So for us to at least ease that barrier so that they're not giving somebody gas money or they're not picking up a whole lot, we took the food up there. And so we've just started that as well. So I think that is kind of one of the things, the need, and honestly when the supply chain kind of broke down during the pandemic, a used vehicle is just as expensive as a new vehicle. And so really the difference in those two, whether you're buying a used vehicle or whether you're buying a new vehicle, is so, like, your payments are not much different. And that's what really people are budgeting. They're budgeting on how much of a payment can I afford. And sometimes that payment is way too much, especially if idea or circumstances within your life changes, then you're really hooped. So if the amount of hours that you work get cut, or if you've become sick and you can't work, all of those things really makes it difficult for people to have that safety net behind them. And, then there's all of those things. Like if you are laid off or if you are sick, then traversing through the systems of EI and sick leave and all of those things is so onerous and complicated that it doesn't get money into people's hands very quickly. And so people are living paycheck to paycheck. And I think there's that middle class is making a lot more money than what we think the middle class should be making. I would say that our poverty level is probably anything under $100,000. Like it really feels that way. Like I would
that's
really
quite a statement.
Well, I think when you really look at if you're making as a family income less than $100,000 a year, how much are you struggling? How easy is it to put food on the table? How easy is it to get, pay your daycare? How easy is it to pay your mortgage if you have a mortgage or your rent? All of those sorts of things.
Those are all very real. But I do want to carry on. You talked about tariffs as well. Why are you worried about tariffs?
Well, cost of living, right? What we've heard over since COVID. Cost of food, cost of food, cost of food, cost of food, cost of living, my hydro bills, like all of those things keep creeping up and up and up. The threat of tariffs and the increase to goods and that grocery cart is huge, and people are very worried about it. If they're already having a hard time making ends meet, what is a 10% or a 20% or a 25% increase in your grocery cart going to look like?
So, okay, we'll take that. The other thing you talked about, and I want to touch on it, is the people's rights. What concerns you?
So I would say that when we look at whether it is, gender equality issues, whether that is women's health rights, all of those things, whether that is equal opportunities for people, the right to even accessing daycare or healthcare. When we are only as strong as our vulnerable people within our society, and if those vulnerable people are not supported, are not protected, then the rights of all of us start to be diminished. And it is true, right? When we talk about Black Lives Matter, it does mean that every single person who is a visible minority, if those rights are not protected, it does go down the chain. Trans rights, people in the LGBTQIA2+ community, if their rights are not protected, what does that mean for the rest of us? What does it mean when we talk about women's health issues? If the rights of a woman to dictate what her own body can do and can go through, and her access to healthcare, those are huge issues because as maybe cisgendered white men, you may not feel that that's an issue for anything but your daughters, your nieces, your aunts, your wives, any woman in your life may be directly harmed by some of those policies that could come down through our government in dictating who has access and who doesn't have access to any sort of health care.
Thank you. We've got a lot of topics to unpack there. Ken.
Well, I don't disagree very much with anything that Amanda said, when you start trampling on rights of one group, it's who's next. I mean, we've seen over the centuries, we've seen that many times.
You talked about Manitoba's place in Confederation and building the economy. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Oh, I'd love to. It dawned on me a few years ago when reading and rereading the history of Manitoba and the Selkirk settlers, the Indigenous people, the Métis, and all came together to a crucial point in 1869 with the, I don't know what the politically correct version is, but known in my generation as the Red River Uprising or the Riel Rebellion or whatever you want to call it. it dawned on me, why did that happen? And it happened, in my view, because there were a few people left over, not a lot, but there were a few people left over and descended from the Selkirk settlers of 1812. There were some communities around, and especially, I think, north of Winnipeg. And then there was the Métis who were centered at Red River and went out from Red River for their annual buffalo hunts, which were, probably went on for maybe 100 years prior to 1869. And then there were some newcomers that had come in from Ontario to settle at Winnipeg, Portage, even Westburn. There was no settlers to count really in this part of the world until 1878, 8 years later. But the Hudson Bay Company sold a chunk of land to the Government of Canada in 1869. And they sent out the survey crews to divide it up and do their thing. They forgot to tell the people of Red River, regardless of their ethnicity, that this was happening. They just showed up. At which point, Louis Riel put his foot on the surveyor chain and said, no further, according to history and according to folklore, but I think it's pretty accurate. And they were ticked because they didn't know what the hell was going to happen, and nobody was talking, nobody was telling them anything. And they thought the land that they felt they had title to in the farms, little bit of the city, etc., some towns, they thought they were going to lose that. So they were mad. They were very, very angry. And that whole idea of, well, it doesn't matter, we won't tell them, we'll tell them after we've done it and that'll be fine. And that approach has been going on for well over 100 years. They don't, the central government, whether it's the central government in Ottawa.
You're talking about now.
Now.
Yeah.
Central government in Ottawa, or the central, and regardless of party, and the central government in Winnipeg, regardless of party, don't seem to tell the rest of us much about what's happening or why it should be happening. And that, I think, provides a lot of distress among people. I don't think it's an election issue as such, but in my column I predict this week, if there continues to be an alienation of Western Canada, Manitoba's only hope is that the have provinces will take us with them. And they won't, because it's going to cost them a frickin' fortune to keep Manitoba going. And that ties back into why is our economy the way it is, something as basic to Manitoba's economy as beef cattle, the number of beef cows is down by 25 to 30% in the last 10 years. Because the round baler made it okay for the old boys to handle cattle for a few more years, but even they're saying, now that I'm 80, I'm not doing this anymore. And so the numbers of cattle farmers is down, and the number of cows is way down. So that's an economic resource that we're losing, And so I think I feel a little bit, I guess I sound like a bit of a poor me sitting out on the prairie kind of guy, but I don't think that Manitoba has been, I don't say mistreated, but I don't think people have seen the potential for Manitoba that we have, and it's not being developed.
Okay.
That is a big concern to me.
Brian, you talk about tariffs and you talk about housing.
Yeah. Okay, so with tariffs, I guess it's twofold. First of all, if you look at the American tariffs and that, where does that affect us? As Amanda said, with food, the very first place that would get hit would be through produce and that. Canada, having snow most of the year, doesn't produce as much as I wish we would. So we start off by purchasing fields in Mexico, and as that comes, it keeps coming up north, and we go up through California, the different states and that, and then finally through summer and fall we're purchasing in Canada. So that would come up quite quickly. In food, you're purchasing food on a weekly basis and that, so there's a turnover. So that would come in quickly, and then would be followed through with the rest of the food areas as well. So there's a big concern about that because, as Amanda said, affordability for people right now with food is, there's a real struggle there. But it's not just the American tariffs. We also have the Chinese tariffs that are hitting us right now on some of the grains, the canola and some of the different grains and pork. And so I was out to High Life last week, spent time out there with them. They seem to be handling it fairly well. High Life has done a tremendous job in marketing around the world, which I didn't realize to the same degree. Australia, Korea, like I knew about Japan and some of their main contracts, but they have markets all around the world. They've done a great job on that. But China is definitely a very important customer to them. So they're quite concerned about it. They're managing, but they are concerned. They've had some changes over the last few years, and they've really benefited the company, and they seem to be doing pretty good right now. But as you know, like that, those tariffs have the potential to be able to hurt them. I guess selfishly looking as a businessman with co-op, there's other areas through the hardware and building materials departments. Housing is already a terrible cost, and so this has the opportunity to push prices up even higher. Continuing on with our agriculture, an area that this year we're fairly safe in the fact that we had pre-purchased a lot of our fertilizer needs and crop protection products and that, but by this fall we're going to have to be rebuilding inventories, and at what costs will those come in? And our growers or the farmers are last year was a little tougher year, and this year has the potential for being a very difficult year. So everybody is nervous. I guess where things are going to go on the tariffs, we're not 100% sure. Then with our energy division, I just haven't quite figured out how this is all going to come out through with fuel pricing and that. We saw, pricing decrease here with some of the changes that have been made, but I don't know where that's all going to end up. I think the manufacturers, a lot of the governments have pushed off a lot of money to the manufacturers, and that will eventually come back around to the end user again. So that I'm not 100% sure on. And then housing, I think Amanda summed it up pretty good. I think, one thing that I wanted to comment is that she had talked about the vehicles and that, and we identified that as a problem too. A lot of our newcomers are coming over that have been trained in a lot of different trades, but they have to upgrade their training within Manitoba. There's some of it is contentious on how that's being unfolded, but the first thing is having to have a vehicle to be able to go somewhere to get training. And so we identified that a couple of years ago and went through and changed the old RCMP headquarters into the training center. And so now because we recognize there's people in this community. Recently we've identified about, it's over 30 nurses that are qualified in different countries that are living within our community and not working in that field. And so we're trying to we've been working with the immigration minister in Winnipeg and trying to get these people fast-tracked into positions. But you can't do that if you have to go to Brandon or to Winnipeg and you don't have a vehicle. But getting back to the housing problem, there again, You know, I can't say enough about our administration staff. We have a very, very good staff in town here. And we were off at AMM meetings a couple of years ago, and there was a few communities had decided, you know, like our contractors can't afford to be doing new development areas and that. And so we listened to a number of communities, well, maybe about 4 communities that had taken that, gone ahead themselves and said, we're going to be going to be doing this ourselves, which we did. We purchased the 320 acres. But now, trying to get through the red tape with 30 government agencies and that to get this up and going, we hope by fall we can be selling some property.
Okay. Back to sort of what you said. Now, I'm going to take license as being moderator to sort of slightly amend the agenda, because there are 2 items that I was expecting to come up during our conversation that haven't done. And I'd like a quick comment from all of you on them. One is around immigration and our immigration policies. The second is with regards to cross-provincial trade barriers. So, your thoughts, just briefly on those 2.
Yeah, I think immigration policies, I think there are definitely people who are nervous about changes within that immigration. I think it depends on where you are in the country, on how big that affects your economy. I think here, you know, there is a lot of reliance on immigration to support our major employers. However, with that comes a lot of other issues as well, because people don't all come through legitimate ways.
Yes.
There are folks here that you know, are just on temporary foreign work permits, those sorts of things, and tracking them through and into permanent residency is a long and complicated process. and there's more complication the more you get into that than you realize, for sure. I think, is there a need to look at immigration and how we're doing it and the support of it and all of those things? Absolutely. I think all of our policies within any system, if we're not re-looking at how we're doing business of government or how we're doing business of business, then, you know, we're not doing ourselves favors in being efficient and supporting those who are coming around. It's been interesting to hear how international students, how that has affected many of our universities. It'll be interesting how that affects some of the, I would say, the knowledge and that brain trust within our communities, and who we are employing and who becomes influential within our systems, whether that is business, whether that is nonprofit, whether that is government. Because I feel really that when we lean on people's experiences and differences and diversity of what they bring to the table, those are important parts of building better systems for all. So immigration here, I think it is a balance. Like, if you don't have enough places to put people, then people are living in dangerous situations, or there isn't enough, aspects of what's going on. And if the cost to the person who is coming over is greater than what they realize, I think we have done a disservice. And so having a look at those policies, I think, is a good thing.
Okay, I'm going to jump to cross-provincial trade barriers. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that to have trade barriers between provinces within a confederation is ridiculous. Years ago, and I hope I'm not betraying any confidences here, but I won't say the business, but I'll say the type of business. They were an excellent company that produced a good quality meat product. They could not sell it in Saskatchewan because their plant was not federally inspected. it's the same inspectors. One day they were working for the province, another day some of them were working for the federal government. And this sounds silly, but it boiled down to 2 different plants, processing plants I visited. One of the biggest barriers to getting federal inspection was the amount of puckboard that they had on their walls, that shiny plastic to keep it clean, because it washes down a bit faster and better, right? And there were other aspects of that, but nobody took the bull by the horns, beef slaughter, and to solve this whole thing, because, and I don't know why, it seemed ridiculous. Another thing that we did, I was heavily involved in the promotion of Rancher's Choice beef plant, and I got kind of shoved into that and was hired actually to chair some meetings and do some things with that. But initially they started out and they said, well, we want to have a plant that'll, we could do 100 head a day or whatever, which is a heck of a lot of beef. Oh no, it's not big enough. It's not big enough. And the government wouldn't leave it alone, and I don't remember which government was in power at the time. Doesn't matter. Got to be bigger. Got to be bigger. Well, it got so big that it failed. Like it never even got off the ground because it was so big. And what they didn't realize that if you're dealing with cattle, you don't want to be hauling them 400 miles to a slaughter plant or 300 miles across from one corner of the province to the other. Nobody would pick up the idea. Well, actually not nobody. Some picked up the idea, but they'd built 10 beef plants in Manitoba and 2 of them went broke, you still had 8. But if you built one big one, it went broke, you had nothing. And that's where we are today. We don't have a significant beef slaughter facility in Manitoba. So they have to be hauled to Saskatchewan or Alberta, which, I mean, is an incredible cost. Never mind why are you really wanting to load cattle on trucks and haul them for hours and hours and hours? It's not economic and it's arguably not humane. But nobody could seem to twig to that. And if you lost 2 or 3 plants because they failed, you still had 7 or 8. And now, as I say, we've got nothing. So that's just one simple area. There's lots of other rules that are out there, and I don't pretend to know very many of them, but I'm told there's a lot out there that make no sense. And so finally, after Canada got a kick in the ass from President Trump, they said, oh gosh, I guess we should be trading with each other. Don, what can I sell you? Or what can I buy from you?
Brian, further to that, I mean, you talked about you're getting goods from all sorts of others. How would reducing those cross-province trade barriers impact your particular business?
Yeah, well, like there's a reason that Western Canada does so much business down into the States opposed to going down east. It's just, there's been so many trade barriers that have created odd trading that we shouldn't be doing within Canada. So I'd love to see there's a lot of barriers, for us within fertilizer, transportation between provinces and that, us trying to send our trucks out west and that. So there's a lot of areas that need to be addressed there. And so on that, I love to see the country continue working on trying to get rid of that red tape. It's just, some of it is ludicrous. It doesn't even make sense.
Well, I was hearing just recently that apparently Ontario and 2 of the Atlantic provinces are looking at signing a deal for that. So that's a good step.
Yeah. And then just a couple points back with the immigration.
Yeah.
One of the things that I find is that within Canada there are certain jobs that Canadians don't want to do, and immigration has been helping to shore up that. If you take in the agricultural fields and that, we need immigration, and it has to be, it can't, there has to be the other side of it. We just can't bring in people without housing and places to put people in that. But we need immigration to be able to support the agriculture. And one little bit of criticism to the parties in that, I haven't heard as much about agriculture through this election as much as I would have hoped to have heard. That's still a major business, a major economy for Canada.
Okay.
I think the problem with that, I just interject, is that there's still a lot of people in Canada that figure the food comes from the grocery store.
Yes. Yes. That's not an uncommon, whether you're born in Canada or come from somewhere else. Yeah, that's very real. I think it's now I want to ask you the question. Considering the platforms or what different political parties have been stating, under the current circumstances, with the current issues, and as we've talked about, there are more than just what we've discussed today. Who are you feeling, or is there anyone that stands out that is speaking to these issues any more than another?
Interesting question, for sure. If we're looking at platforms, I think there's maybe two parties that had put out their platforms as of yesterday. I don't know what about today. Everybody has their statements and their and all of that kind of stuff, for sure. Does anybody have the magic bullet? Absolutely not. I honestly, the best case scenario for Canadians is a minority government where everybody works together. Because honestly, there are some gems in every single party. I have to say, I haven't given much thought to the Green Party and Elizabeth May, but if you look at some of their platform, there is some really interesting concepts and ways of looking at economics, at natural resource development, at housing, at all of those things. The NDP, having $10 a day daycare is a huge, huge accomplishment and impacts a lot of Canadians' lives if the provinces have signed on, and in Manitoba we have. And I know that that's a huge benefit, and keeping those things like dental care and other types of health, universal health care, those sorts of things. The Conservatives having a look at the way they kind of fiscally kind of look at things is not a terrible way of looking at it. Who can manage it all? I really do feel that maybe that the Liberals have a better ability to work with all parties if all parties are willing to work together. Now, whether or not that will happen, I don't know. I feel that the world stage has a major influence in that. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm looking.
Fair enough. Ken?
Well, I look at the actions of the governments, and of course the last 10 years has been a Liberal government. But, I think somebody in the government, regardless of the party, should sit down and smack somebody up the side of the head and say, have you really thought this through? Like, why on earth would we it's because not spent yet, but commit as a country, when we're short of housing and short of healthcare, why would we commit $50 billion to electric car battery plants? I think there's 3 of them. Because one got one, and then the next car maker, so us too, we want our $12 billion. So I think it ended up being $50 billion between 3 or 4 major companies. Not spent yet, but committed. The buildings are started, and they're sitting there and they've backed up and said, oh, gee, I'm not sure we're going to do this, because some bright soul one day realized that, we're having trouble selling electric cars in Neepawa. I wonder why. Because the damn thing won't get to Winnipeg and back on one charge. And it could leave you somewhere around Hedley on the way home if it's a really cold day. They're not there yet. I would love to have an electric car. But it's just not feasible. Somebody, they're talking about electric semi-trailers. Good luck. Like, maybe someday, electric buses have really had mixed success, to say the least. So the manufacturers see the writing on the wall and say, holy crap, huh? I guess we're going to have to sell non-electric cars for a little bit longer here. And I would say, in my limited knowledge, I bet you it's going to be 10 or 20 years longer before we're there yet. There's another breakthrough has to come before it'll be feasible for everybody. If I lived in Winnipeg and all I had to do was go 5 miles to work and back again, I could probably do that on one charge for the whole week. Great. But not here. That $50 billion should have been earmarked for housing and healthcare, I think.
So where are you in terms of looking at the current election issues or statements coming from the parties? Who do you think perhaps is in your mind would be positioned to best address some of these? Because we know nobody's perfect and they're not going to address everything.
Well, I don't disagree again with Amanda. She's going to mark this down as a day in the calendar here. But the Green Party, ironically, I talked to the Green Party leader years ago in Manitoba, and I said, you got a lot of great ideas, but the problem is you have to have a party to do it with, and they don't. They haven't convinced enough people to. It's a lot of work to make a political party and to make it work. Trust me, I've been there and been doing it all my life, since 1968. But I would say, pick a number off the table, I would go with the Conservative Party. I think they have the most chance of righting the ship, so to speak. And we are spending way, way more money than we've got right now. And I know as a business, I can't do that. A country can do it because they can print more money, but that comes to a screeching halt too. And I don't know if it ever will come to a screeching halt, but there have been countries in the past who just went bankrupt because they were out of the bankers of the world said, not backing this anymore. So, I mean, I've made my political leanings pretty clear over the years, obviously, but we do need to sit down and talk to all the parties. And there's good messages in all the parties. I think that the Liberal Party is done like dinner as far as I'm concerned, but they're still going to win the election. I think a year from now, people are going to say, holy crap, unless they change. They may have gotten the message, but they're spending on projects that aren't like the battery plant or a few other things. Oh God, this is not really getting us where we need to be.
Okay. Thank you. Brian?
Well, that puts me in a little bit of a position because as a municipal leader, we're not supposed to
He's like, I want to be neutral. Can I please be neutral?
Okay, fair enough.
But a few comments. The previous Conservative government, provincial government, had a lot of programs that really benefited Neepawa. The current NDP government has had a lot of programs that have really benefited Neepawa. And our Liberal government, we've had federal dollars come into Neepawa as well. And so as a municipal leader, we have to work with all the parties in that. And so to pick one, I will say though, similar to Amanda's comments, there are tremendous people throughout this country within every party. I wish we could take them and put them into one. But that isn't how democracy works.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I would probably limit my comments to that.
Okay, fair enough. I understand your position. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you in that kind of role.
Not at all.
This has been interesting. And so now we're sort of coming down towards the end, and we're sort of going to open it up. Any further comments you want to make? It's been very, very interesting to see. How do you think ultimately, and I'll just throw this out there, you don't have to go with this question, you may have something else you want to add. How do you think ultimately the results of this election are going to impact Neepawa?
Yeah, interesting. Just through the comments, it's interesting. Last federal election, parliamentary reform was such a hot topic, and there has been not one peep about that. And so it would be really interesting to see in the next 4 years whether or not that comes creeping back. I feel that Western alienation, even the alienation of Quebec, right? That parliamentary reform really does need to happen within Canada, and for the best, to represent what every person in this country needs out of their government. What do I think? I would agree, Ken. I think it's going to be a Liberal government again. And will that benefit Neepawa? I don't know if I've seen specific. I think the housing, possibly on the housing side, that there may be a lot of opportunity for Neepawa to access some government funds or programming through affordable housing initiatives, those sorts of things, the ability to kind of get onto some of those social programs that may come through a Liberal government. But I feel like that is probably where we're going to see impact in the next 4 years. How the Liberal government deals with tariffs on the world stage will be interesting to see, whether or not our pork plant, fares well in that, or even our lumber plant, like our and our canola farmers. Like there's a lot of there's a lot of people that are being infected on the world stage within our community, and whether we fare well in that, I hope we do. I hope that there will be a government in place that can manage that crisis the best, and that we will be able as a community to benefit from that.
Thank you, Ken.
Well, I guess I get hung up on housing a number of years ago when High Life was starting to really expand. People said, well, they should build housing. And I talked to the leadership of High Life back in those days, and they very purposely said, no, we're not going to get into housing, because they pointed to, and I've never been to Brooks, Alberta, but they pointed to Brooks, Alberta, and I guess there's some pretty ghetto-looking housing in that town. And so they didn't want to go there. Their hope was that the community would be able to keep expanding the housing, which we haven't been able to keep up. In terms of, I don't think that, it may sound like a broken record here, but I don't think any government is going to pay the kind of attention that needs to be paid to Manitoba, nor are they going to pay the kind of attention that needs to be paid to the Indigenous communities. Like, how long have we been talking about getting clean water in First Nations communities? Yes. It's still not there. Yes. Some, but it's improved, but still not there. The railway to Churchill, the now proposed hydro line to Nunavut. Why not a highway to Nunavut, for God's sakes? They got a highway to Alaska. Why have we not got a highway to Nunavut? If we're going to keep these communities going, and they are kept going by government, if you pulled out the government funding out of everything north of Churchill, there would be nothing there, literally nothing there. But we have to have it there because it's traditional, it's part of our economy, it's part of our national identity, it's part of our national defense, part of our sovereignty. We have to do it. Let's recognize that. And the economic spin-off from that, I think, would be huge. John Diefenbaker used to pout about, the Great North. In 1958, for crying out loud. That's how long ago? That's 60 years ago or more.
And John Diefenbaker also gave away the Avro Arrow.
That's true.
So it works both ways. Sorry, I just had to throw that in there. Well,
I've never forgiven him for that either.
Okay, Brian.
It's not my comment. It's a comment I heard that I thought was pretty good. That this election isn't about party. This election is about leadership and being able to take Canada forward. And a lot of the comments from my peers here about where do we sit on a world stage and that. So I tend to agree with that. As we're looking for that leadership to take us, to help us, fight with tariffs, to sovereignty. Ken's right, huge thing. So I think that, I think within a week we're going to find out what direction people are going to want to see.
Well, and then from there, it's where does the pedal hit the metal sort of thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I thank you all. I appreciate your candor. I certainly appreciate the the way in which you all handled yourselves. Nobody threw anything. Thank you very much, Ken.
My cup's empty now.
It went well, and I'm hoping people viewing in, it probably reflected a lot of your views. And I'll leave it open. Anybody have one final comment to make before we wrap up?
Go and vote. Just regardless of what party you are voting for, who make your vote, like just make it. It's so important. Just trying to express the fact that this is a right that we have. And for some people, it hasn't been that long that we've had that right. So please go and exercise your right to vote.
Ken?
Do away with the hate.
Yes.
On the internet, my wife is on the internet quite a bit, and she says that friends of hers are just vitriolic about issues and whatever. Come on, no. If you can't sit down and get along like we do around this table, then we're in trouble as a country. We're in big trouble if we can't do that. I think we can. And we have to.
Okay. Brian?
If you can't get out to vote next Monday, today's the last day of the advance polls. Go out, vote today, and then go home and watch the Jets win tonight.
All right, on that note, listen, thank you everybody for watching Neepawa 2025 Election Roundtable. Thank you to my guests, Amanda Naughton-Gale, Ken Waddell, Brian Hedley, got it this time. Really appreciate it, guys. And some very insightful thoughts and comments came in. So everybody had a good day, and I will reiterate, get out and vote, and do it without hate. Bye for now.